Driveway Devi, as our name suggests, are huge admirers and believers of the intrinsic power, potential, and capacity of women and of Devis. In fact, we've delved into this many times. We've done, for example, an interesting series called The Devi in Tao, which was essentially an exploration of that Devi Shakti, which actually resides in all of us, irrespective of our gender. And my guest today at the Driveway Devi Dialogue and its second edition is holistic coach Pooja Sharrma, who, in my understanding and interpretation, is pretty much an embodiment of this very Devi Shakti. And therefore, we are very appropriately calling this episode Devi Undaunted. Pooja has had a tremendous personal journey of a certain amount of trauma, very, very testing and trying life situations that she has not only personally combated and triumphed, but is now employing all of that lived experience, wisdom, insight into her coaching practice and informing, educating, and guiding others to also go towards their individual emancipation. I'm very, very delighted and privileged that Pooja has joined us. Pooja, thank you so much and a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad that I got this opportunity to be here with you. This conversation is definitely going to be very insightful from both our ends because I look forward to a conversation which is more insightful for all of us and adds value to each one of us viewing this and both of us having this conversation here.
Wonderful. Now, Pooja, I'm going to, at certain points during our conversation, seem as if I'm being a little bit cheeky, but I promise the endeavor is only to play devil's advocate. And I think you might agree that this entire word holistic is a word that's been trending, it's been overemployed and used, and perhaps its meaning and essence has been a bit diluted. So before we really go further, please explain to us what holistic coaching means in your case, in how you've evolved your own modality, and why do you say holistic?
Well, I did start my journey long ago, and that was back in the year 2005. As a part of my first modality that I picked up was tarot card reading. Then my soul wanted more. I wanted more. In the urge of knowing more, I happened to learn various other modalities like Reiki, Access Bars, Access Consciousness. And a couple of more modalities like Akashic Records, numerology, astrology, Vedic astrology, Lal Kita, multiple other learning, healing modalities. However, later is when I realized that, we go to a doctor, and a doctor cannot heal or die or probably cannot heal all the patients with one medicine. He needs to have various other medicines because I can't say that I will only be dealing with people who come from with a set ailment. I am open to speak to, be around, and coach people from the various walks of life. And that's where I felt that I should rather build up a modality, a coaching mechanism, which gives this entire healing experience to people coming from different walks of life. And not everyone will be open to a tarot card reading or to a coaching. For most of them, what I have realized is, with all these years of experience, that just a small conversation heals the person. However, as a coach, I need to understand that where is that conversation leading to, and how during the conversation the person can be coached or counseled, which are two very different words. How we can coach a person or counsel a person or give a therapy to a person during the conversation itself. So that's why now I call myself as a holistic coach, because when someone comes to me, I will never say that now we're going to go forward with tarot, with coaching, with NLP, or any other modality. I would just want to sit, listen, and then in unknowingly just give the person a space of healing, and the person does not really go back with saying, okay, I got coached by Pooja Sharrma in the capacity of NLP or a tarot card reading.
Right. Well, what you're saying deeply resonates with me, and I'd like to share a couple of reasons why. One is that at a very fundamental level, particularly when it comes to wellness, when it comes to one's life, no one size fits all. So it's only logical that practitioners offer various philosophies and ethos and a combination thereof in order to help and guide somebody. The second thing, and I suspect you might agree, is that science and philosophy, science and alternative modalities that were until recently very strictly parallel lines, and parallel lines that were very far apart, have now started, if not merging, coming closer and closer together. You go to even a traditional psychotherapist, there are imminent chances that that professional will, as part of their advice, tell you certain tools and techniques that are extremely scientific. But along with that, they will also recommend meditation, yoga, and several other, treatments and techniques that wouldn't necessarily have formed part of that scientific professional's consideration set until quite recently.
Very true. Completely agree with this. Yes.
Okay, now, as you and I chatted, and you were very, very generous, gracious, and forthcoming, telling me or letting me into your private experiences of the past many years, I think it's of immense value, of course, without getting into anything you specifically don't wish to share. What were some of these unsavory phases of your life where you first felt extreme distress?
Well, I had a beautiful childhood, if I may say. As a child, while I was just 6 months old, I remember that my parents had their own obligations towards their profession, wherein they had to move abroad. And I was left to be taken care by my grandparents, and it was a beautiful childhood. I was really pampered. Not everyone. I feel very blessed that I come from the space where I was taken care of by my grandparents. In the set of nuclear families these days, children do not get that opportunity to be taken care of by the grandparents. But then,
In fact, at the cost of interrupting you, I will quickly add on a lighter vein that particularly in the Indian family construct, for a lot of children, the best thing that can happen to them is to be straddled with the grandparents, because I suppose a lot of grandparents find themselves at that age and stage a little bit guilty about the way they raise their own children. So they tend to become a lot more relaxed and indulgent with the grandchildren.
true, very true, completely agree. And yes, very similar. Even I too had that experience. Even my grandparents had that experience to just keep me close to them, and I was raised by them. And that was during that point in time. I didn't realize that that bond between parents wasn't developing. However, as I grew, I had amazing experiences that every child goes through of different ages. And then one fine day, my parents came back when I was 5 years of age, and one fine day when they called me up over, and I remember calling wasn't that easy that point in time, especially from a different country, different space. So they called them, and I didn't recognize them, and I called them uncle and auntie, and that is when they realized now's the time that I should be taken to them and to stay with them. And that's when I continued to stay with them from since the time I was 6 years of age.
But very quickly,
yeah.
Pooja, prior to that, this idyllic phase that you had with your grandparents, just out of curiosity, that was in Jaipur?
That was on the outskirts of Jaipur.
Okay.
I was brought up in a village close by to Jaipur, and I had the opportunity to enjoy the village life.
That's so
While I
lovely.
was going to a school also, part of it was homeschooling also, but had that opportunity to be raised in a village life. My grandparents were doctors; they had their own hospital, charity institute over there. So that's how it went by. And
You brought, I'm really sorry I keep doing this, but you brought up such an interesting point. I can't let it be and let you carry on. What were a couple of these really, really sort of lovable features of that semi-rural life?
Well, unlike today, we knew who the neighbors were, and beyond the boundaries, we also knew who are the people living in the villages around. My grandmother was a gynecologist, she was a doctor, and I had the opportunity to go around the village with her while there were patients that had to be catered to in their own home space. Women then, when they conceived and when they delivered, it all went by in their own home spaces. We didn't have those facility of having a hospital around. I've been through those beautiful phases in that era, and at the same time, I didn't have to take a permission or keep my parents or grandparents posted on where I am going. All I had to do was just get ready in the evening, post my school hours, and I would say, okay, bye, I'm going around. And then somewhere or the other, my grandmother didn't know where I had my lunch, where I had my dinner, and by day end, I was safe, taken care of, and back home with a lot of experiences. Then roaming around in the fields was another beautiful experiences. We've had almost all the vegetables from the field itself. We had cows and goats in our space that I was staying in. So the best of the food that I've
Wow.
had during those times.
You seem to have reaped the benefits, to use a farming pun, of a genuinely simpler, trusting, safer, and footloose and fancy-free time.
Absolutely.
That's so wonderful.
It was beautiful.
Sorry, I interrupted you. So now you go back to your parents around 6 years of age.
Yes, and then I continued to stay with them. Spent a lot of time, close to a couple of, I think, 7 odd years, staying with them in Saudi Arabia, where they were placed at that point in time. We plan to come back to India, and I also have a younger sister, so we were being brought up together over there, and life was good. I was still connected to my grandparents more than I was connected to my parents, and off and on I would continue to visit them. And at a very early age, I always was kind of a person, a child, who wanted to do something different, because I was looking forward to praises to be tapped on my back by my parents, because I always felt the need and the urge of they appreciating me, and that made me do various weird things. That point in time. BPO culture wasn't a very in thing and wasn't something that people knew. Very new culture. I remember it was Jetpack that spread the bounds, as it came beyond boundaries in Jaipur, and that is when I joined them. I remember my first job, and my father didn't talk to me for 3 months, because for him it was something that I wasn't supposed to do, because he was earning well, taking all our dreams, wishes, requirements, needs, everything was taken care of. However, I still wanted to do that. I thought someday my parents would be happy of me, of what I am doing. But eventually they settled in that this is what she wants to do. And in the interim, I also completed my a course with Air Hostess Academy, because I also had a flair to fly and be an air hostess, which that point in time was a very fancy profession to be in. So I tried my hands wherever I wanted to. One, because I wanted to fulfill my dreams. Second, I somewhere wanted to make my parents proud. At that point in time, it didn't feel like a pressure. But now when I look back, I see that what was I trying to do? As in, I was trying to pressurize myself. Kids these days go through peer pressure. I was going through that parent appreciation from the parent kind of a pressure. So
we'll come to the parental validation that one seeks, which is a fundamental human condition. But I also want to underscore that for a generation or two, this entire business of flying and becoming cabin crew and working with the airlines was a very, very literal metaphor for spreading one's wings and taking flight. And one did it for so many reasons. One did it as a ticket to travel and see the world. One did it for a certain amount of freedom and liberty. One did it for so many reasons, all of which actually intrinsically relate to Devi Shakti and this propensity to spread one's wings and proliferate. In terms of parental validation, of course, I think we are all firmly lodged in that little matrix until different points in our lives, until we either in therapy liberate ourselves from it, or God forbid they only do it. So, but what I want to, on a more serious note, understand is that, do you think in your case there was probably this extra desire for it from them, since your formative childhood wasn't spent with them?
I think that was a major reason of the validation that I was seeking. But I'm glad, Karthik, that with all these years and with the wisdom that I've gathered, uh, I have been able to evolve and understand it now. But at the same time, I really feel bad. Bad is a very strong term, but then I would want to use it at this point in time, because there are people who are still struggling and are not understanding that it's the urge of being validated is what that's keeping them in that space.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I am trying to do as a part of my life now, I am trying to keep my son away from that validation, that that urge of being saying, "Wow, you've done a great job."
But you
Yeah.
do that, and I'm very happy that you're doing that, because essentially what tends to happen with generational trauma or any kind of status quo is that we tend to inherit it as unpleasant heirlooms and then just go on passing them along. So the fact that you're conscious of that and you're stopping that ripple effect is wonderful. But I'm curious whether you do that by in a healthy degree, constantly validating him, or trying to explain to him that it's not a priority in the first place.
uh, Not a priority is a very underlying message that goes by to him. In the initial phase of my parenting, I had to take a lot of effort, put in a lot of effort to ensure that he does not get into that space and my trauma does not get passed on. And having said that, I too have a journey when it was getting passed on, because both of us, we the parenting starts from the day the child is born. We also happen to become a parent on that very day. So we both grow together. The child and the parent starts to grow together, and that's when we've grown through that validation to a very underlying message that you don't need to be validated by me over every action that you do. This makes him a more individual, independent, and a confident human being. Yes, having said that, it does not come in easy having carrying that kind of a trauma. But then I'm glad that we are in the journey of healing ourselves, and that's why I'm making a point over here, because somewhere, some person, you, me, somebody watching this, at least gets a click of that moment and says, "Oh my God, I think I'm doing it, and here is the moment when I should recap."
Precisely,
Yeah.
precisely. And that is why it gives me an opportunity also to share that these kinds of dialogues can and ought to be only scripted to a certain extent, because there has to be room for organic and tangential movement, because that's when important content comes out. Um, do you think that parents also seek validation from children?
Yes, there are times that it does happen. Me as a parent, yes, there are times when I go back to my son and I do ask him if this is right or wrong. And in fact, the generation these days is very different, or maybe they're more open. The kind of parenting style has evolved in all these years, because of which we, as a parent, at least I have, as a parent, I have been able to give that space to my child to come back to me and tell me if a certain action that's done by me is correct in his vision or incorrect. So then probably we get into that dialogue of why, when, how, what. But then that validation does come in very naturally in the space that we've created.
Well, for me personally, I don't seek validation from my daughter, but it would be wonderful to get it, because especially given the fact that the absolute opposite is happening these days. I think, and although she's just 8, but the generations are advancing so much that at the age of 8, she seems to have sensed that I'm in the throes of my midlife crisis. And so, ever so often, she will tell me things like, Pui, don't come to school. You think you're too cool. I don't know what you wear and how you dress. It's very embarrassing. So, I had proposed to her that I would take a few classes at her school. I'd even spoken to the founder. And then, of course, it was shot down by headquarters. So, there you have it. Okay, let's move on. Now, because we are speaking about parental validation, you also shared that very, very tragically, you went from being the apple of your father's eye to really being sort of disenfranchised by him. And I think that there is some merit in any case, biologically, fundamentally, to this whole daughters and fathers are very close, and sons and mums are very close. Talk a little bit about what that kind of invalidation from a father can do to a daughter, particularly when she's been at the other end of the scale earlier.
Uh, well, it did have a series of episodes that went by for that particular incident and an episode to happen. Uh, I I kind of, when I got married, I survived, I call it survived a very toxic marriage. Those moments now have given me a lot of strength. Having been in that marriage for close to 5 years, finally, when my son was born, I had the courage to step out and say, well, this is not the kind of environment that I'm going to extend to my son. And that's when I had the courage to step out. Once, as a woman, as more less of a woman, but at that point in time, as a child, I was looking for that support from my parents, that they would support, understand. Having said that, it was a journey in itself. After one toxic marriage to one toxic relationship with parents is where I ended into, because divorce, uh, while it may be an okay thing in some of us, however, no matter how educated a person is, most of us do not happen to see that entire episode, make it seep in very easily. So that's exactly what went by with my parents as well. I would talk more about my father over here because my expectation from him was more, as in he would support. However, he wasn't prepared for that episode to happen. It happened, and then he probably today, if I have to say, if I look back, he wasn't prepared for it and he didn't know how to handle it, and that's why he went bizarre. He didn't know what to do, and one thing that he did was he disowned me. He said, "This either you go back or else you start to live by your own." And that came as a shock to me. Someone who I was always very attached to, despite being away, despite having all the gaps that we had. However, somewhere I had a lot of affection. I continue to have a lot of affection for him. But then that response from him, wherein he shut his doors on me, I would rather say I was thrown out with a little child, wherein I didn't know how to handle the divorce that I was going through, the separation that I was going through, new to the journey of parenthood. At the same time, handling my own emotions, all of it came as an overwhelming situation to me. I didn't know how to handle all of it. And that's where the journey of strength, struggle, trauma, triumph, everything simultaneously started to happen. And having said that, I feel that I'm in a much better space now, still evolving, still healing, but that gave me a lot of strength. It felt like a fracture, painful, broken from within. The worst part of going through such episodes is when we undergo a physical fracture, people look at us, they kind of try and extend support to us, unsaid, unknowingly to us. But then when we are going through such situations within ourselves, a fracture within ourselves, broken into pieces within ourselves, it's very difficult to make people around understand what you're going through. And now is when I say that we shouldn't seek for empathy. Rather, if we need that support, we need to be vocal about it. Most of us, we confine ourselves into a space, which I too did. I love reading books. I wanted to confine myself into a self-help book, which probably helps me out. Having said that, now I'm in the process of writing my own journey, a beautiful book which describes this entire situation. One thing that came in as a blessing, Karthik, over here was that helped me overcome this entire thing. I tried to find my space of comfort in people who are going through similar episodes rather than seeking support from parents who have no idea as to what's going to happen, what is happening in her life. I started to seek support, make friends with people who are single parents going through separation or a similar kind of an episode, and we tried to exchange a lot of stories, a lot of experiences, and there were times that we acted as a strong support system for each other. So that was what the journey looked like, from knocking doors to a house which felt my own house, from being thrown out and from a space which I called a home. Now that's a house to me, and but my father still happens to be my space of home. While in all these years we haven't spoken, but somewhere I do have a lot of gratitude for him. I'll tell you why. Because if I'm able to be all by myself, I think somewhere he gave me the strength. Strength does not always comes by giving shoulder or being around. It also comes by throwing the person out of a space and making the person more individual and confident.
I have a raft of thoughts occurring to me, and I'm going to try and articulate only the important ones as succinctly as possible. Otherwise, we'll be here for hours. But first and foremost, I wish you people watching could sense the energy and the tangible and palpable emotional charge that I can feel in this room, the authenticity and the the realism, because it's really, really in the air, and I can't thank you enough for sharing that. Particularly, I might add, and I have no qualms saying this out loud, in the construct of a city like Jaipur, where people don't talk and they are under distress of unimaginable degree and magnitude, and everything is normalized and everything is passed off euphemistically, forgiven, brushed under the rug in the garb of culture, tradition, or weighing up the scales and finding those few inconsequential things that allegedly justify the trauma that is being meted out. So thank you for being so vocal. Lots of thoughts, but the important ones, very, very important, to not, as Pooja said, go and have your own solo pity party. I know all of these things are easier said than done, but I also simultaneously know that this is precisely that Devi Shakti that we go on and on about. And a situation presents itself, and you realize that you had it in you all along. It was not coming from anywhere else. So rather than indulging in a pity party, be vocal and ask and seek help. I think it's also very critical to underscore a word and a concept and a feeling and a very real experience of an emotion called shame in these situations, because I suspect that in a lot of cases, the silence is because of that shame. It's because of the victim mentality. It's because generations, again, have been normalized on certain expectations that are again passed off as culture and tradition, where you have somehow failed as an individual and a human being if you couldn't make the marriage work, and things of that nature, which again must form some of the reasons for the crushing disappointment that your father experienced. So again, that entire generational trauma and that status quo has to be questioned, and I'm so happy that strong people like Pooja have done that. And finally, I personally, I understand intellectually, and I agree, and I can appreciate what Pooja is saying, that she owes her father ultimately a debt of gratitude, because out of that ouster and experience, she learned a lot, and she's today standing on her own 2 feet, independent and fierce. But I personally don't agree with this strategy of teaching teaching someone how to swim by throwing them in the deep end.
Absolutely. See, I think it's only the adverse situations wherein we tend to make ourselves happy even in the adverse situations. I remember watching that movie, Three Idiots, and every time and again, irrespective whatever the situation of the security guard out there was, he continued to say all is well. So I think I was also going by that flow wherein I continue to tell myself all is well despite whatever the life was throwing at me.
I completely appreciate that. I also understand perfectly well from the standpoint where when one is rationalizing important relationships in one's life, and one seeks closure because that's the only way to carry on in a calm and content manner, that is a perfectly logical and legitimate way of understanding that individual and accepting him or her and getting closure on that chapter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Having said that, Karthik, with all these years of experience, I've also realized one thing as a person. At least it helped me overcome multiple episodes every time seeking for a closure, because closure isn't a one-sided episode
Yes.
activity. Every time that you would seek for a closure, not necessarily that the other person is ready for it. So the best way to do that is find a closure in your own head and let it go by. I think that helped me a lot, wherein I continued to say, oh my God, by the grace of God, they haven't gone through a similar episode. So why ask them to support or help.
Absolutely.
Rather find a better way, but then finding a way by moving out of your own space
Right.
is very important. We all have a lot of self-talk during those times, not only those times, on a daily basis as well. It's always good to talk it out, is what I strongly
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's a very critical point, Pooja, because actually, more often than not, you will not, it will be a fallacy to expect the other individual or the other party in this grievance to see things from your perspective. So you will have to find that closure by yourself, and it is absolutely critical to make that effort. बहुत serious बातें हो गई हैं. So let's lighten the mood a little bit. I'm usually not this unimaginative, but I couldn't help the cheesy pun. So we're going to play some games that we call mind games, of course. So try to give us instantaneous responses. These are sentences that I'd like you to complete. In order to feel relaxed, I...
take a time out.
If someone really angers me, I...
Not my circus, not my monkey.
When a client first comes to me,
I greet the person with a smile.
One word that captures the essence of my coaching practice is...
Gratitude towards the person who has the courage to at least open up and come in the capacity of coaching.
Wonderful. My suggestion to anyone in distress is to...
do not let your failures become a tag to yourself. Your failures don't define you.
Your failures don't define you. Quite right. Resilience can be built by...
Patience.
Boundary setting is vital because...
For your own mental health.
Okay, now we're going to do something called mental math. I know that means something completely different at school these days, but this is our mental math. Self-love plus empathy equals...
Pooja.
Black plus white equals...
My favorite color, grey.
Good plus bad equals...
Life.
Tea plus coffee equals...
A weird punch of energy.
Okay. And finally, we are going to do music for mental health. You don't have to be an excellent singer, but I want you to sing or hum the first song that pops into your head when I say the following words. Joy.
हंसते हंसते कचाए रसते जिंदगी यूं ही चलती रहे.
Envy.
Oh my god, that's a very strong word. I can't think of a song.
There used to be a wonderful ad campaign based on this very, very human emotion and insight in my time, which was for Oneida Television, and the line was owner's pride, neighbors envy, owner's pride. Neighbors envy, owner's pride. It was so beautiful. Okay, anger.
Why don't you help me with?
I don't know, Sada Haq.
Sata ho कहते रख.
Okay, sadness.
दुश्मन न करे दोस्त ने वो काम किया है, उम्र भर का गम हमें ही नाम दिया है.
Pride.
कहते हैं लोग जो काबिल नहीं है तू, देंगे वही सलामियाँ, दिल थाम के रहो एक दिन.
Fabulous. You've been such a wonderful sport. Okay, and like I mentioned in our first episode, and I'm going to repeat it like a stuck record until it happens, and until a very astute, intelligent, and far-sighted individual or organization decides to sponsor us. We will have to make do with very modest gifts at good performances in these quick fun rapid fire rounds that we'll be inventing fresh for every episode, suited to that particular individual. So Pooja, it is with great pleasure that I peddle my own poetry book and give you a copy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So much for this.
Thank you very much, genuinely, for making the time. For I know that it takes, it's double, triple the time when you have to go somewhere for a particular recording or an interaction. You can't just do it online. But it's so wonderful to meet people in person these days. It's completely different, and you've been extremely forthright, vulnerable, and a genuine show of strength. And I can't think of anything more appropriate than to reiterate what we titled this particular episode, which is Devi Undaunted, because Pooja, you really are Devi Undaunted. Thank you very much for the wonderful work that you do and for having come.
Thank you, Karthik. It was amazing being here, and trust me, this is the very first time that I got the confidence to share my journey on the other side. While as a coach, as a tarot card reader, as a corporate professional, people know my journey. But on the other side, I think it's a beautiful platform that I got. The kind of space that you've created gave me that confidence, and I am sure that this is going to evolve even further. Thank you so much for the series of podcasts and the space that you've created for all of us. Thank you.
I'm humbled, and my absolute pleasure, and thank you to all of you for watching.
Thank you.